Welcome to the Vinyl Attic, the attic of vinyl, surrounded by vinyl up here, where we are in the middle of counting through 100 albums that matter, 100 albums that are worth seeking out for your LP collection. And I like to give a little spin, a little sociological analysis, if you will. We're talking about an album today that was mighty important to me when I was 16. We're talking about Pete Townshend's, officially his third solo album, Empty Glass, comes out in April 1980. This record was my life for a moment. In fact, in my English class, we had to write an essay on our hero, and I wrote it on Pete Townshend because I was such a fan of The Who and Pete Townshend's writing and this idea of being a voice of a generation, and I hope I die before I get old, and all that good stuff. Earlier in 1978, the real final Who album that we think of with the classic lineup came out, Who Are You?, with that great title track that was just so epic. It was so like the Who are still in the mix. Shortly after that, though, the drummer, the madman of drumming, Keith Moon, died of his own consumption. Certainly was a guy who lived on the edge, famous for driving, Rolls Royces into swimming pools and drinking way too much. And so it's not surprising at the age of 32 he passed away. And it kind of left the Who rudderless for a bit. How could they go on without Keith Moon? He was such a part of the band. And so Pete kind of withdrew into the studio, his home studio, and started working. And he started working on some of the songs that were outtakes from the Who Are You album. They didn't quite make the cut, and kind of refining them a little bit better, writing new music, including there's a great song on here called Jules and Jim that is a sort of attack on two journalists who were writing for the NME in Britain, who were, very much a part of the punk rock scene. And they wrote, we don't need these bloated old rock stars from the 60s hanging over us, driving their fancy cars into swimming pools, and the world is better off without Keith Moon. And so he wrote this sort of angry song, and really kind of, starts focusing on himself as a solo artist. Because the first two, the album before this one that he did was with Ronnie Lane, and the first one, Who Came First, was just sort of demos and wasn't really a proper album. Really wanting to do a proper album, he brought in producer Chris Thomas, whose first producing gig was producing the Beatles' White Album when George Martin went on holiday. Chris Thomas produced 4 tracks on the Beatles' White Album, including playing several instruments. The harpsichord on Piggies, that's Chris Thomas. Worked on Dark Side of the Moon. Just, this guy has like such a history of producing on some of the greatest albums of all time. Brings him in to kind of pull together a cohesive sound for this record. This record is also Pete navigating the new punk rock scene. In fact, one of the songs, Rough Boys, it's the opening track. It's very intense. He dedicates it to the Sex Pistols, and it's also very homoerotic. There have been a lot of people that try to write some stuff about Pete's sexuality into it. Kenny Jones playing the drums, who would later on become the drummer of The Who, and was sort of this shot fired that Pete, the solo artist, was here and was a part of the rock world. But there were also pop songs. Let My Love Open the Door. I mean, the manager, the Who's manager, did not want Pete Townshend to put Let My Love Open the Door on this album because he thought it was too poppy. And in fact, it became a big hit, went right up to number 9 on the charts. A top 10 hit for solo Pete Townshend, and continues to be a classic on the radio. I mean, Let My Love Open the Door is one of the songs that a lot of people will hear and they don't even know that it's Pete Townshend. The rest of the songs are all deeply personal. They're really dealing with his alcohol consumption, with his fractured marriage. A Little Is Enough, which is there's a great story behind A Little Is Enough, where he was seeking out some spiritual guidance, because he was a follower of Meher Baba, and was speaking to one of the gurus about how his wife doesn't love him, and the guru said, she doesn't love you at all, and he said, well, my wife said she loves me a little bit, and then the guru said, a little is enough. Little is enough because love is infinite. And then he just took that and wrote this beautiful song. I mean, there is this spirituality. Even Let My Love Open the Door, according to Townshend, what is about Christ, is sort of his Christian song about the power of spiritual love, which blew my mind when I learned it, because, you know, I just thought it was this great sort of romantic pop song. The theme song, Empty Glass, comes from sort of a Sufi belief about the glass half empty or the glass half full. There is all this kind of reference to being in the punk world. In fact, Pete was heavily drinking in this period, and he's going out a lot. He's going out to see the Sex Pistols, and he's going out to see the Jam. There are a lot of pictures from this period of him kind of just sort of drunken, hanging out in clubs. But this record was a way of working through all the demons. And then finally, when the Who starts deciding that they're going to reform, and they're going to bring in Kenny Jones to replace Keith Moon, he starts working on the tracks for the Who album while he's still finishing up this album. So this comes out in 1980, and then the Who's next album, Face Dances, comes out in 1981. And I remember the day that it came out. I remember hearing the first time of hearing You Better on the radio in my car in the parking lot of Reed Ann High School, and being so excited there was a new Who album, which didn't sound super rockin'. And in fact, Roger Daltrey was a little upset that all the good songs ended up on this album instead of that album, that he really focused on his solo album instead of the next Who album. Regardless, I mean, I think over time, Face Dances has gained more fans. It was a departure. It wasn't the hard-rocking Who of the Keith Moon era, but the songs are great, and, you know, it has stood the test of time. This album was a chance for Pete Townshend to kind of say, I'm not just the guy that smashes his guitar. I'm not just the windmill, you know, guitar god from the Who. I'm also this guy who can translate some very personal stories. And besides the fact that he plays all the guitars on this record, Rabbit Bundrick, who did the keyboards with the Who and continues to do keyboards for the Who, I think, is on it. There's a great variety of music here, but the thing that got me when I was 16 years old is Townshend's voice. I mean, this is a guy whose singer is Roger Daltrey. Like, Roger Daltrey sings his songs. Here he is singing his songs, and it's so passionate. I wouldn't say soulful. He doesn't really have a soulful voice. It's strained and emotional, and he's really trying to get these feelings out. And as a 16-year-old kid in 1980, I really kind of felt it. I really felt like this need to say these things that you need to say. I am an animal. Rough boys out in the streets. I mean, the way that he sings these songs, there is just something really vibrant about it. And I think this album is an incredible record. His next record, which came out 2 years later, All the Best Cowboys Have Chinese Eyes, is also brilliant. And he kind of embraces some of the modern mod movement of bands like the Jam on that record. And the songs are brilliant. The Sea Refuses No River. I mean, the lyrics, this is the guy that did Tommy and Quadrophenia, right? He knows how to write a song. But really brilliant work. I just love it. I love this guy's music. He was a true hero of mine. And on the tour, after this record came out, the Who went back on tour before putting Face Dances out in 1980, and I camped out at the Omni in downtown Atlanta for 3 days to get tickets to see the Who. They were certainly my favorite band at that moment, and had 8th row center and got to be super close to Pete. I have one picture that turned out from that show at the end when they came out. They didn't do an encore or smash any guitars, but they came out at the end, and I snapped a really good picture. And it was so great to be close to this guy. So I love him. I wish he would put out another record. He's still noodling around the studio. I see him on Instagram all the time, so I know that he's still making music, still playing as the Who with Roger. But this is a great record. It's incredibly personal, but but strongly expressed. Like you believe every single word on this record. Everything. Even if you're not sure what it's about. Why is he singing about rough boys? It's just incredibly passionate and really strikes a chord. So there you go. Pete Townshend, always great. And he didn't die before he got old, so sorry about that, Pete. All right, next time we're going to do a soundtrack. We're going to do a soundtrack that I don't believe is available on streaming, but I think its relevance has come back. We're going to talk about the Eurythmics and their soundtrack to 1984, from the year 1984. And this is a book that everybody's reading all of a sudden, including my students. It's back for obvious reasons, but we want to talk about this sort of mysterious soundtrack that the Eurythmics made to a movie that didn't play really any of the music in it. But it's a great album, and we're going to talk about that next time on Vinyl Fetish. But in the meantime, Pete Townshend, I love this man. My hero, the hero of a generation. Pete Townshend matters. Of course he matters. All the songs. Don't cry. Don't raise your eye. It's only Teenage Wasteland. Pete, we love you. This album matters so much, especially for people who have dealt with addiction issues or dealt with sort of intense emotional periods that knew that there was a light at the end of the tunnel. This album matters. All this music matters. You matter. Let's talk about it.